Hi, brothers.
Hi.
We saw the other days about revelation and faith. It's also we began to describe the experience of faith from the point of view of phenomenological analysis. What happens when we say we have faith? What happens when we say we believe? You get some idea already from what I have described yesterday in two different ways. What happens is my whole being opens itself to the other. From the other, I sense an invitation coming to me. That is what happens when you say, I believe. That is to say, the meaning of faith is this interrelationship. In our case, we are speaking about a relationship between God and us. The personal relationship between God and us is what is revelation. Faith also is the same. But from the side of God, it is self-revelation of God. From the side of us, it becomes a response to His self-revelation. So this personal relationship is what the content of faith is. It is not intellectual thing. I should emphasize it again and again. Intellectual matter is not a matter of relationship. Intellectual faith is objective faith, propositional faith, which does not express itself through action. Objective faith expresses itself through our recitation of the creed or other teachings of faith, through our words, mouth. That is hardly faith according to the biblical experience, biblical figures we have seen. And so, yesterday we saw Bultmann and Paul Tillich, two great thinkers of the last century. They are Protestants, but their analysis is accepted by all of they are Christians. So therefore their analysis is based on Christian experience of God and Christian experience of faith. So that is what we have just done yesterday. According to Bultmann, that is the last one we did, faith as response from us can happen only when there is an event, a Christ event. Word of Christ must touch you. Word of Christ must touch us. Only in response to a Christ event, the response from us will take place. So, word from Christ is the revelation. Our response, in accordance with the word, is faith. But then we now know Christ's word or the gospel word is not necessary as gospel, as the Christian gospel. This experience of being invited and giving a response, that can happen also in the case of other religions. So the possibility of this revelation response, invitation response is open to all. And this is what happens in faith. So we can ask the question, do I have faith? Or better, do I live faith? Have faith can be in the mind. Do I live faith? That is to say, am I gripped by the ultimate concern of the kingdom? That being gripped. Do you have that sense of being gripped? That is the question. If you have that sense of being taken to the goal, that far away goal, your whole life is moving towards the ultimate concern that you have. Everything that you do, if that experience is there, then you are living faith always. And this living your faith is experiencing the self-revealing God. That is to say, you are experiencing God. Not merely God's word, you are experiencing God. God's revelation, God's invitation in terms of word, you are experiencing. Thereby you are experiencing the person of God Himself. And when you return by obedience to the word, then you are experiencing faith and you are also experiencing God. So God experience is matter of this faith. Basically, you are all God realized. God realization is the foundation of Christian life. So that is there. Don't misunderstand and limit experience of God to some little things there. Your experience of God may have to be developed. It may have to grow, and it will grow. The more you become more conscious of living death for the sake of the ultimate. You can live death by encountering death any moment. Any moment you can die. That kind of an experience, but still you go. That is God experience. Encounter death for the sake of the ultimate goal, ultimate concern. Move all your life. So it is a death and resurrection experience. It is not a kind of a joyful, jumping kind of experience that is familiar to you. That is not important. Experience of being obedient to God for the sake of the kingdom, that is the experience that can be understood as God experience. And this God experience is not a matter of a small little event. It is a life experience. Life as obedience. Life as response. So life as response. So it is a whole life, not a partial experience. It is a totality experience of our life. So this in summary is what we saw yesterday. Now let us see how another philosopher, Levinas, describes it. A very intuitive philosopher. Is a Jew, but his experience of faith is something that speaks to us also. According to him, we experience the unconditional and have a relationship with it through our encounter with the other. That is to say, when we encounter human beings and live in relationship with them, we in the direction of the kingdom of God, let me use the expression of the other philosophers, in the direction of the ultimate concern, you have your relationship with one another. You are having a God experience, you are having an experience of the unconditional. You know what condition is? The unconditional means there is no condition at all in relation to Him, the divine. For example, supposing I say, I will take you for a film if you are doing this work, you are cleaning my room, I will take you for a film. It is conditioned.
Yes.
But then if I have a strong relationship with you, I would say, I will take you to film. But I take, whether you wash my room, clean my room, or do anything that is pleasing to me, it is irrelevant. Whatever you are, whatever you do or whatever you do not do, I will take you. This is unconditional. Now, the experience of unconditionality is an abstract noun. The unconditionality is expressed when you know fully well that I will take you, whatever happens. So there is an experience of unconditionality as experience of unconditionality, lack of there being any conditions. Normally there is some conditions for me to take you to the film or something like that. In relation to God, there is total unconditionality. That is to say, no conditions will ask us or make us move away from the relationship with God. Nothing, as in what is, no shipwreck, no enemies, no war, nothing, whatever suffering, nothing. That unconditional relationship to Jesus, which St. Paul had, that is the experience of unconditionality. So, you can have a relationship with the unconditional in and through encounter with the other. My life is a life of encounter with people, encounter with the other. And when I encounter with the other, am I living my orientation to the ultimate goal, or am I living my self-centeredness? That is important. If I leave my commitment to the ultimate concern, then I will be doing to my brother something which brings him justice, brings him equality, brings him joy, brings him experience of dignity and respect. When you do that, you are experiencing the unconditional, you are expressing your faith. So faith is not something apart from your ordinary, normal human life. Respect and the conditions of the ultimate concern that come in here. So through my encounter with the other, you encounter the unconditional, the divine. Human maturity implies such a relationship with the other people. Only if we have that relationship, we are real humans. Supposing I deal with you every time and humiliate you, I scold you, then I hit you, beat you and all that, then I am not living my faith. I am not living in relation to the ultimate concern. There is no ultimate concern which seems to grip me. I am concerned about myself and my power, my authority, and so I just scold you, I beat you, and all those things. I am concerned about my own self, my own power, my own feeling. That is not encountering God. Encountering God is when we encounter the other and we have the orientation to the ultimate goal, the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is equality, justice, and so on we experience in our world, and in my relationship with the other, that should be there. Maturity is possible only then. Otherwise, you are not a mature man. That is to say, you will be like a child. Opposite of mature person is a child. How does a child behave to the others? It is not concerned about the good of the other. Child is not concerned about the well-being, justice, respect, nothing of that sort. Child is concerned about itself. When it wants some attention from its mother, it cries. Mother comes running and does whatever is required. He is inconveniencing his mother. He is not doing anything good to the mother by taking her away from the work and so on. But mother loves the child. There is different thing. Mother's love to the child is something of encounter with the divine. There is she is giving the child a consolation, giving the child a comfort. These are the elements of the kingdom of God on earth. So she is living faith. You may not think that she is living faith. Because every day we do that, no? So what is to say about faith? But that is living of faith. Everyday thing, you see it in its real dimension. That you magnify it with a magnifying glass. That is what this philosopher has done, the theologian has done. In the encounter with the other, you encounter the other. However, this kind of relationship is opposite to the relationship that characterizes children. A child is narcissistically self-centered in his attachment to others. He uses them as he needs them for his own purpose. That is clear, no? If he wishes to reach maturity, this initial narcissistic attachment to others must gradually turn into self-donation to them, into an oblative attitude, a gratuitous availability for the other because he is he. What is the opposite of child's attitude? Attitude of becoming mature. He should get out of his narcissistic attitude. Narcissism, you know the meaning of narcissism. It is coming from a Greek mythological character, Narcissus. He sees his shadow, his reflection in a well. When he looks into the well, very quietly in the forest, he sees, and he has got long hair and that. And the Greek people, and he could not make out whether what he sees is himself or no concept of himself, reflection. They do not know. So he sees a girl in the well, nice hair, beautiful appearance, and so on, and he wants to marry that girl. but that girl is himself. So this is called narcissism, loving oneself, totally loving oneself. So child is a narcissistic reality. Child has this narcissistic attitude. It loves itself. It wants everything for its comfort and convenience. So its attachment to others is narcissistic. It is related to others, and others are happy when the child is related to them. But from the child's point of view, it is totally selfish. A man reaches maturity, discovers the meaning of human existence through a steady increase of ever fuller and more authentic oblativity and selflessness. So the more the child learns to offer itself, self-offering, oblation. Oblation means offering. So self-donation. Or the more it grows in oblativity, readiness for offering oneself, to the others, it grows in maturity. So the condition for becoming a real human being is to grow from childhood narcissism to a maturity of self-gift. And the mother is full of self-gift for the child. All the relatives who love them and so on. This normal human life is a life of faith. That we must understand. We should not think of it as the involvement of our mind with meditation and prayer, where we are by ourselves. These are all good and should be there. There can be expressions of faith, but basically expression of faith is not just when we are by ourselves, when we relate to others. When we relate to others, we relate to the other, and God experience takes place there. And this self-oblativity is not with any condition. There is no condition in being related to the other, because he is he. Do I get anything from him because he is he? Because he loves me? That is not there. Because he gives me smile? That is not there. Because he is he, I love him. I make a self-donation to him. That is growth, and that is relationship to the other, and that is relationship to the divine faith. The Jewish philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, in a religious philosophical system, states that it is our discovery of our fellow men and our encounter with them that opens the closed world of our self-centered reality to the infinity of the wholly other. Emmanuel Levinas was a Jew, as I said, and he uses religious language in his philosophical work. And in this he says, our discovery of our fellow men and our encounter with them is what opens the closed world of our self-centered totality. Self-centered totality to the infinity of the other. What is self-centered totality? Totality means what? Totaling. 2 plus 2, 4. 4 plus 4, 8. That is totaling. He said totaling. Totally. But I am thinking of totality. Totality is not. Totality is connected to another word. Totalizing. Totalizing is different from totally. Totalizing means I make everything applicable to me as my own, and I add everything to my own. Whenever I see another person, I add him to my world of convenience and comfort. You have the experience of totalism in politics. Totalitarianism, not totalitarianism. Totalitarian. What is a totalitarian? Someone like Modi. He does everything what he wants. Whether it is good for the people or bad for the people is not his concern. Whether it will get him votes That is what is important. His purpose is to come to power again. So get votes by crook or hook. That is totalitarian. His will is the final rule. He changes everything according to his plan and his idea, puts people in jail if he is a Muslim and if he is just coming out of Kashmir. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Totalitarian means that someone who does his own will and achieves his own purpose. So that is totality. Totality is the world where I have my purpose realized. So that totality I must get out of. So self-centered totality I must get out. Levinas says that it is our discovery of our fellow men and our encounter with them which opens the closed world of our self-centered totality. You understand now? Self-centered totality. To the self-centered totality, the infinity of the wholly other. Infinity. We are speaking of the language of the transcendent. Infinity. The unlimited. The unconditional. So the unconditional and the unlimited we meet in the other. So you see, this is what happens if you are a man of faith. So what happens when you have faith? This is it. So we are asking phenomenological question. We are describing phenomenologically the experience of faith. We are not using the metaphysical language. Metaphysical language would be, there is God. God is the cause of everything. So if anything is there, it must be anything is happening, it must be caused by somebody else. We cannot go on eternally by saying there is somebody behind the cause, somebody behind the cause. And we must come to a point where there is no one else. So that unmoved mover, uncaused cause is God. What? Is there anything happening in you? Is there anything happening in the world? Is there anything happening in relationship with the other? Faith is believing in the God who is the unmoved mover, according to the old understanding. As we were speaking about reality, total reality, that is the metaphysical language. We speak about things. Metaphysical language speaks about things. The phenomenological language makes us humble. We do not know, we cannot know things in themselves. So we don't speak about things. We speak about what happens in our consciousness, what happens within us. Now what I said is something that happens within us. Now you understand what is phenomenological language in distinction from metaphysical language. And you have to use metaphysical language. Phenomenological language. So sometimes I may slip of tongue may be there. I may use one word for the other, but then you should be able to recognize what is the correct thing. You can make out, you can go through the notes. Even if I make a mistake, which I don't correct, I am not able to correct, I don't notice, still you should be able to see things critically. Don't just gulp down everything what is there in the notes. You use critically. I may have used in the writing, things may be alright, but in what you hear, there can be slip of tongue. So be careful about that. So be critical, self-critical. I mean, critical in what you do, what you read. So the closed world of our self-centered totality is opened. That is when we encounter the other. And in this encounter, I am concerned about the ultimate concern. I am concerned about the kingdom. To make it plain, Levinas does not say that. Levinas simply says, when you meet the other, your self-centered totality is opened for relationship with the other and relationship with the ultimate other, the unconditional.
Yeah.
So now, as long as the possibility of encounter has not occurred for a man, he lives serenely innocent in his element, wherein he feels at home. So, the opening of the self-centered totality should happen in the life of a person if he wants to be grown up and not merely be a child. As long as this encounter with the other has not taken place, the person is in his totality and his serenely, innocently he lives in his element wherein he feels at home. What is the element in which a man lives? Element is to be understood in terms of, a fish lives in the water. Water is the element for the fish. So, a selfish man lives in his element. He is happy. He doesn't bother about the others. He is happy and quite innocently happy. He does not bother about the other. He is not doing anything wrong to the other. So, he is quite innocent. He lives innocently in his element where he feels totally at home. So that's what happens. Read again. As long as the possibility of encounter has not occurred for a man, he lives serenely innocent in his element wherein he feels at home. Thus sheltered in his human dwelling place, he makes the surrounding world a domain of which he is the center. So the man who lives selfishly, he makes the surrounding world his shelter. He is there secure, and domain of which he is the center. Domain means the kingdom. So the whole thing is his kingdom, where he is the king and he is happy. So that happens when one has not encountered the other. One has not had the occasion to encounter the other. He takes all things unto himself as food for his enjoyment. Everything that is there is food for him. What do you do with the food? Do you have, what relationship do you have with the food? Either relationship or I eat relationship. I eat relationship. I eat. So everything in the world of his domain is something for me to eat. Something for me to enjoy. If there are people, I use them for my purpose. As slaves, no dignity for them. I don't treat them as equals. I don't give them what they require for their life. I use them for increasing my wealth. So I'm using them. They are food for me. If I see a girl, that is my right to rape her. This was the way the upper class people were looking at girls. That is precisely the opposite of faith. Some people are there who do all this kind of things and go to the church and pray fervently. He is an atheist or a believer? He is an atheist. Worst type of atheist. Even though he says rosary every day, that should be clear for you. The right understanding of faith is this. So, his dwelling place, the shelter, thus sheltered in his human dwelling place, he makes the surrounding world a domain of which he is the center. He takes all things unto himself as food for his enjoyment. Clear? Whatever remains outside of him is referred to himself as an object for his viewing. Another way of saying food for eating, viewing. Viewing means
just for sightseeing.
I make you an object of my joy, pleasure. Everything is an object. There is a story about a big philosopher. When he wants to use a woman for his pleasure, what he does, he goes to the brothel, prostitutes, and asks a girl to undress her and to walk up and down. That's all. Staring. I'm making an object of her. She feels that I am an object before him. She feels there is no interrelationship with them. It were better if it were humanly related. Now this person I spoke of, you know who it is? You know the person. It's Sartre. Sartre, the big philosopher. So he speaks of stare. I make an object of my stare. So, object of my viewing. And that is what Levinas says. Other people in my domain are food for my enjoyment or objects for my viewing. Both are same. Thus he becomes a totalizing subject, looking on all other things and persons as objects and bringing them into the totality of his world. He becomes a totalizing subject. You understand what is totalizing subject? Subject is who? Someone who decides, who has got the power of decision, someone who has got freedom, someone who has got consciousness, and can make objects of the other, objects of things. Objects, I make it understood by me. I grasp the object with my intellect and make it mine. That is object. So, a totalizing person is such a person, looking on all things and persons as objects, for bringing objects and bringing them into the totality of his world. Totality here means what? The domain. The domain where everything is mine. That is called totality. This is a special word usage of Levinas. Totality means not the ordinary English totality. Totalizing does not mean ordinary English totaling is totalizing, and totality is a world where everything is for the totalizing subject. He decides, he acts, and he enjoys. And the whole thing that is there in his domain is meant for his enjoyment, either eating or viewing. This short totalization is shattered as soon as another man addresses me, both in the literal and metaphysical sense of the word, thus becoming for me a bizarre signifiant, a meaningful speaking face. So this totalizing attitude is shattered, it's broken. When someone addresses me, address means someone speaks to me and I listen. Somebody who speaks, I don't listen, he is not addressing me. He speaks and I listen. So he addresses me. If I don't listen, he cries. No address. He is not addressing me because address is conditioned by my readiness to listen. So when someone addresses me, the totality is shattered. I am now enjoying the domain for myself, eating, viewing, all as objects, everything as objects. Now this totality is shattered when someone addresses me and I hear. You see, Levinas is using a metaphor. Somebody talking to me and I listening and so on. But then you understand the meaning behind that. You have enough knowledge of literature. So then what happens? The one who addresses me becomes visage signifiant. French. A meaningful face. It is not to be pronounced visage significant or significant. Visage signifiant. The G is pronounced as je and signifiant, A-N-T is pronounced as un. So when you use that, pronounce it in this way so that nobody thinks that you do not know the French. So it becomes a visage signifiant, a speaking face, a significant face or a speaking face. So the person addresses me, I listen. Then the person is no more the object of my pleasure. It is not the object whom I am going to see. It is not the object of my viewing. It is not the object of my eating. But the person is there and he becomes a significant face. A significant person. Someone who relates to me and he has something to say to me. That honor is his. When my totality is shattered, selfish totality, and I listen to the other person. And this is already beginning of relationship with the other. You understand? When I recognize him as a person and not as an object for my pleasure, already there is relationship. He becomes a speaking face. Until now, any person there, they were not speaking face, they were there things. Things can't speak. So a girl, I use her. I don't worry about her crying. I don't worry about what she says. I use. Speaking face means I allow the person to speak to me. A visage signifiant, a speaking face. So speaking is what that important. This is put in inverted commas. This other comes to me not as some object of thought which I may interpret and introduce into my totality. Like for instance the objectified message of a book or a painting. He comes to me with the naked face as the other, as a subject who can neither be interpreted in terms of my totality nor be reduced to it. I'll explain. The other comes to me. So this face, the other comes to me not as some object of thought which I may interpret. Other has got his own personality. The other comes to me as another person. He is not merely something which I can interpret. Thoughts, if any sentence is there, I can interpret. So I am interpreting now what is here. It is difficult to understand at first sight. I am interpreting it according as I understand, and I am making it clear to you. Here I am using the sentences. I am interpreting the sentences. I am not simply respecting the sentences. If I were simply to read, I thou relation is simply kind of bending and fusing in ego and alternate ego and so on. If I simply read without interpreting, I allow the thing to remain as it is. I allow the person to be as he is. That is not interpretation means. I can't interpret the man. He is there, so I interpret him. He wants something from me, and therefore I need to do something so that he can be made use by me. No kind of interpretation. See, for example, texts are interpreted. Bible, for example. We read that and we interpret that. Make it possible for us to understand and relate it to our situation, make it meaningful in the situation. And that is interpretation. Now, I cannot interpret the face. That means I cannot interpret the face as part of my context, part of my situation, part of my domain. He cannot be made part of my totality. That is the meaning. So I am using the language of Levinas. So part of my totality he is not. He is a naked face. He becomes a naked face. What is naked? Becomes a naked face. Naked face has no covering. It is
Without
plain,
mask.
without any mask or anything. At that time there was no corona. So naked face is, today every face is masked face. But the naked face means someone who is open, and I can see on his face how he is and what he is and so on. This face speaks to me. The face expresses something what the other person is. So there is a naked face. Supposing I cover it, then there is no more naked face. If you cover, then I cannot see the other person for what he is, how and all that. So the person who addresses me becomes a naked face. Or he is a naked face. In his need, in his situation, he becomes my dialogue partner in his situation of need. I don't interpret him like I interpret a text. I don't interpret him like I interpret a painting or a drawing. A drawing has to be interpreted, then only it has got meaning. I don't interpret and make him part of my meaning. I will explain a little bit also, just a little bit about this painting, for example. Modern art, you are studying for modern art and so on in your philosophy course. Yeah,
Yes.
simply lines and no dimensions, and so on. So what is this? You have to interpret. Only when you interpret it becomes meaningful. What is this line indicating?
That's a wall. Behind the wall, one elephant is
An
there.
elephant. Where did you get this?
This is the same philosophy.
Okay.
Modern art.
Okay. Interpretation. I cannot interpret the other man according to my convenience. Here we are interpreting. This is meant for interpreting. I must make it part of my knowledge, part of my understanding. So I interpret it. But this naked face I cannot interpret and make it part of my convenience and my desires and plans. So I cannot interpret it like a text, neither can I interpret it like a picture. He comes with a naked face as the other, as a subject. Other, the other means subject. I and the other, the subject, the ultimate being who is the subject. Subject means, what is the meaning of subject? Someone who can decide, one who can action, one who has freedom, or self-consciousness and possibilities for action. So the other becomes a subject. If it were a painting, the other would not become a subject. So the other cannot be interpreted as a painting, that the other becomes a naked face as the other. When it is the other, I respect him. I listen to him, who can neither be interpreted in terms of my totality or reduce him. I cannot make him part of my totality. I cannot reduce him. No. It is a totally new, pure and absolute experience. Not a phenomenological, thus subjective unveiling, but a revelation. That is what he wants to say. So the meaning of revelation, philosopher is expanding the reality and giving meaning to it which is there in your mind. So what happens in your consciousness, the philosopher is expanding that, what is in our consciousness. So when you know about his way of expanding the inner reality of our consciousness, then we become rich, we become aware of this is like this. So this is a way of help that you should give to your people in your sermons and so on when you become priest. So the totality, it is a totally new, pure, absolute experience for me. I am used to using everybody for my purpose, my pleasure, and everybody would be an object for me. Now the face becomes subject. That is a new experience. Totally new. It is not a phenomenological experience. Phenomenological experience is interpretation. Phenomenology, I am interpreting what is there. I interpret what I see as a reality. Or I interpret my consciousness in a deeper manner so that the depth of my consciousness agrees with your depth of consciousness and you realize what you are in your consciousness. So it's interpretation. So this man is neither an object of experience, nor a phenomenological subject, but a subjective unveiling. Thus a subjective unveiling is not a subjective unveiling. I unveil. So he is not a subjective unveiling. I am not interpreting him from my particular point of view. Subjectively, for my part, I unveil the object. That is not. So he is not a phenomenological and thus a subjective unveiling, but a revelation. Revelation here means the face speaks what it is. Face expresses, and I receive the expression. I listen to his word. I listen to his speech, speaking face, significant face. So I am related to the other in the manner of I-thou relationship. But then actually for Levinas it is not I-thou relationship. We will come to that later on.
One question, Father.
Yes, ask.
If the person is not encountering with the other, how can he identify the other as a subject?
No, I am encountering, that's a new thing. I am encountering the other no more as an object. That is the first experience, new experience for the egoistic subject, the owner of the domain. First time, if he listens to the other, and the other becomes then in that way a face. I don't use him, I don't enjoy him, I don't view, but I respectfully encounter him in a dialogue, and therefore I am open to listen to him. So that is the philosopher is describing a situation with his own terms and his own setup of seeing. So that is just to make us clear. So the ordinary questions are not here very relevant. But what I said to you, certainly your question is clear for you. So this is it becomes a revelation. The face becomes a revelation. Revelation, I have said that revelation is God revealing himself, God's self-gift. So here the face becomes revelation. You see, the face is the ordinary human being. But then when I listen to him and I respect him, he is no more a part of my selfish domain, but he becomes no more, he is no more something I can interpret. He is no more something which I subjectively unveil, but beyond all my subjective manipulation, he is a face that reveals revelation. So I get message from him. I listen to him. Message. So that is really where the philosopher describes his pictures, the elements of his picture, the depth that he gives it. And this is true. When we think of it in the depth, this mechanism is really working. And this insight of the philosopher is an insight, deep human insight. It is not his depth alone.
There
It is a human depth.
There in philosophy, he speaks about the identification of the face. But here he is interpreting as revelation, the face.
Interpreting the face, no. No interpretation. Where did you do your theology, philosophy?
Here only.
I don't know. So, here there is a face whom I encounter and who becomes a revelation. And that is already a sign of the divine. So his face hides the divine. Or the divine expresses itself through his face. Every encounter, where you encounter a person as a person, this takes place. And that is why Jesus himself says, when you do the least of my brother something, you do it to me. In the least of our brothers, it is his face. The least of the brother hides the true face of Jesus. The true face of Jesus expresses itself through the other. So, biblical truths. Levinas has not taken it from New Testament. He has nothing to do with New Testament. He is a Jew. Then his insight corresponds to our New Testament description of the last judgment. So he becomes a revelation. See, it's put in inverted commas. This is not the ordinary meaning that is implied there. A deeper sense is given to the word revelation. Same with all the other inverted comma words. There is a deeper sense within them than normal words. The other confronts me with the demand that I acknowledge him. That is, that I unconditionally abandon any effort to introduce him into my totality. That I step out in pure disinterestedness from my totalizing self-centeredness towards his otherness. The other confronts me. So what happens in this encountering of the face? He confronts me. He stands before me and faces me. Confront. No confrontations in the opposition and fighting and so on. But in reality of the face is that I cannot ignore. He confronts me. He stands before me, in front of me, and demands that I acknowledge him. I must respect him. I must acknowledge his presence. I must acknowledge him, and that I unconditionally abandon any effort to introduce him into my totality. He demands that I should not reduce him according to my liking and dislikes, my plan of life, or reduce him into my totality. I interpret him. He says, I want to be respected. I don't want to be interpreted according to your self-centered conditionalities. I am beyond all your conditionalities, your conditions, beyond. It also demands that I step out in pure disinterestedness from my totalizing self-centeredness towards his otherness. The author is explaining the same thing in different words. I step out in pure disinterestedness. When I am a self-centered man, everything is equal to my interest, my benefit. So I must get out of my habit of being concerned about my interest and total disinterestedness. You understand? No interest, no bit of my self-interest is that I get out of my self-interest and my totalizing self-centeredness. So totalizing, you understand the meaning of totalizing, right? So from this self-centered totalizing sense, I must get out towards the otherness. The otherness of the other, that I must respect. Something which we don't do in the caste system. We don't respect the otherness of the other. The other is a means for us to use. The other is a person for my convenience. The other is someone who, by means of whom I can feel great. Put him down, I become great. So other is somehow used. So this caste mentality and caste system is something which does not agree with faith. Our understanding of relationship with the other as a relationship with God. So I must get out of this self-centeredness and self-centered totality. I must stop totalizing him into my self-centered domain. What is revealed to me by his naked face is an absolute unconditional demand. So what is revealed to me is an absolute unconditional demand. He is making a demand, unconditional. I cannot stop it with any conditions. If you are good, okay, I will listen to you. No conditions. If you speak in my language, I will listen to you. No conditions. Unconditional. Totally. Unconditional demand. His demand is simply that I rest my whole existence out of the totality and throw it open for the totally unforeseeable, for the infinite. His demand is great. His demand is encounter in me the divine. How is that? The naked face revealed to me is an absolute unconditional demand which rests my whole existence out of my totality. Rest. W-R-E is rest. You heard the word wrestling, fighting and all that. No? So I rest myself out of it. I forcefully take myself out of my totality, my self-centered totality. So the word rest is put in inverted commas. No? No, okay. I rest my whole existence out of my totality and throws my totality, or throws my world open for the totally unforeseeable. Totally unforeseeable. What he may say, I do not know, I do not interpret. Whatever he says, I listen to. So unforeseeable, he can say what I don't foresee. So if I were to foresee, it means I am interpreting it according to my categories. So I should not interpret in my self-centered totality, but totally out of my totality I must go confronting it for the totally unforeseeable. See, for the infinite. So the infinite is put in inverted commas. So I throw open my world for the totally unforeseeable, for the infinite. And that is the divine. Sorry, the person who in the concrete addresses me that this unconditional demand is made on me. The person who is now a face whom I respect and whom I listen to, that face, and through that face the unconditionality of the other I experience. The unconditional demand is made on me through me. How is it made? How do you know that this is an unconditional demand? Then he comes to another scene. The demand is unconditional is shown by the fact that the one who addresses me, although by essence needy, a widow or orphan, is also at the same time my judge, and through the encounter my judgment. So the unconditionality is experienced in our encounter. So this face that is before me is not merely a needy face, it is also a judge and a judgment. How does it become judge and judgment? Supposing the face, needy face, speaks to me and I refuse to listen, or I do not treat him as he deserves, and as a result he dies, then I am not free. I am being judged. In my consciousness, I feel being judged by him. So he is a judge before me. He is a judgment. He is my judgment. Once he has launched his appeal to me, I can no longer, without guilt, remain in my enjoyment. I may refuse to listen to him, but then I become the murderer of my brother, and the atheism of my totalizing self-centeredness become culpable. Once he has launched his appeal, so I cannot remain any longer in my enjoyment, in my pleasure, quite innocently. I am no more innocent. I become his murderer. He judges me as murderer. He judges, and by the same judgment, he is greater. And who can judge except God? So in him and in his form, the divine is before me. And so the I-thou relationship of equality is not applicable here. Here, I am here, the other naked face is greater than me. This is judge and judgment. So Levinas' understanding of encounter between two persons is I, no, thou, I, and the other, judge. So he is unconditional. I encounter the unconditionality of the other. In the other, I encounter this. Once he has launched this appeal to me, and I can no longer, without guilt, remain in my enjoyment. I cannot simply enjoy and remain. I may refuse to listen to him, but then I become the murderer of my brother, and the atheism of my totalizing self-centeredness become culpable. Atheism of my totalizing self-centeredness. I am atheist. Here, not because I don't believe the theory of God, I am not atheist. I am atheist because I refuse to encounter the other. It is unconditionality. The divine is present before me. So atheism is something practical. Atheism is not simply merely intellectual. There are many people who refuse to believe that God is. That is intellectual thing. They don't find any reason to believe in God. We believe that there is reason, but some people don't believe. We cannot prove to them. So they are atheists, or they have bad experience of religion. God's people and God making the other poor people slaves and keeping them there and give them promise of heaven so that they may suffer all these worldly sufferings quietly, and they will not retaliate and quietly go to heaven. So that is convenient for me. So my religion and my preaching oppresses the other. That kind of religion they may say it's not right, and that kind of God I don't believe in. Some Marxists may say, I don't believe in that God also. I think you also don't believe. You should not believe in that kind of God. That kind of God is anti-divine, anti-biblical. Believe in the God of the Bible, the loving Father, not this manipulating magical figure. That is not God. So, the atheism takes place actually when I refuse to listen to it. And when the naked face dies, I become judgment. And my totalizing self-centeredness become culpable. If I consent to turn towards the other, my whole existence sets out in the direction of the infinite, towards what Levinas calls, with another biblical term, righteousness. So if I consent to turn towards the other, if I listen to him and I do what is required, I engage in dialogue and encounter, means I do what is required, the whole existence sets out, my whole existence sets out in the direction of the infinite. So I am listening to him, but by listening to him, I am encountering the infinite in the person. If I don't listen and he dies, I become murderer, the infinite judges me. Or the other who is there is, or through him, judgment comes upon me. So the other is the presence of the infinite. And if I listen, then what happens? I turn towards what is called righteousness. I get righteousness. Righteousness means judgment, salvation, justification. I am made right before God. I am no more a sinner. I am made acceptable to God, righteous. Once more, the transcendence of the invitation which reaches me through my fellow men becomes manifest in what Levinas calls asymmetry within the intersubjective relationship. The intersubjective relationship here is asymmetric. Levinas said asymmetric. So in this affirmation of asymmetry, you know what asymmetry is? So these 5 fingers, these 5 fingers here, both are more or less same, right? Symmetrical. So the shape, they are equal in every way. So, but here that equality is not seen. Here, this one is how much? This one is how much? Not symmetrical. This is called asymmetry. Opposite of symmetrical. So this asymmetry within intersubjective relationship. So there is an asymmetry in the intersubjective relationship. There is no more Buber's either relationship. And I believe this is more applicable for us in our theological thinking. Buber's also can be used, of course, but then this is more revealing. For the either relation is not merely some kind of blending or fusing in which the ego and the alter ego grow together into a dual unity, as in the system of Buber. So either relationship is not a blending of I and ego and the other. A relationship of either. So Buber's. So they both talk to each other, they have encounter with each other, they blend together, they become in this way symmetrically related to each other. But then this understanding of Buber is not acceptable to Levinas. He speaks of asymmetry within the intersubjective relationship. That is also biblically more true. Asymmetry in the intersubjective relationship. What I may do for the other stands no comparison with what I have the right to demand from the other. What I may do for the other, I give something to the other, I do something to the other, and the other gives something to me. There is no symmetry between these. What I get from the other is greater than what I do for the other. So, the asymmetric relationship, the impact of it in our experience also is there. I receive it is more than what I have the right to demand from the other. There is what I may do for the other stands no comparison with what I have the right to demand from the other. I demand from the other salvation or righteousness. So what the other may do, what I may do for the other stands no comparison with what I have the right to demand from the other. I demand. As soon as I speak in the same terms of myself and of the other, I am once more caught up in totalization. So, that is his insight. When I speak about him and me in the same way, symmetrical manner, then I am caught up in my totalization. You remember the meaning of totalization? By using of it. So, as soon as I speak in the same terms of myself and the other, I am once again caught up within totalization. To believe or to have faith is to break through the totalizing world, to enter into a relationship with the other, and through him to be related to the other in total self-surrender and commitment of the self. I suppose it's clear. Teilhard de Chardin, to reach followers in this way. Who is Teilhard de Chardin? One big scientist, philosopher, scientist, theologian. He worked as an anthropologist in China and reached significant discoveries and so on. So he wrote a book, Divine Milieu. Then there are so many other books of him. According to him, we encounter the other in the other. So this is, for Teilhard de Chardin too, Reaching out in love towards one's fellow man is the starting point of the attitude of faith and the discovery of transcendence. So, experience of faith is this discovery of transcendence, relation with the transcendence. So, I am related to the transcendence when I am able to get out of my selfishness, selfish domain, and I am able to listen to him and his requirements. For the other, I listen to him. So, I get out of my total self-centered domain and I put myself at the service of the other. So, that is the image that we have. It is a metaphor. In this metaphor, you are able to see the depth of our relationship with the other. And faith is this relationship. A relationship where you meet the other. And it is no more something in the head. I believe all those things and all these things and so on, so I am a believer. There can be some kind of justification for saying that. For example, the credo is called symbol of Christianity. So someone who is a Christian or not by reciting the credo, if I recite the credo, then you are a Christian. But in a very superficial sense, I am a Christian. But the true Christianity is not in reciting the credo in my head. True Christianity is encountering the other and recognizing and receiving righteousness from the other. Not being judged by the other, but being accepted in this encounter by the asymmetrical being, asymmetrical reality of the other. In the other, there is the great other, that is faith. So you have a different concepts to examine your faith. Have you faith? Do you have faith? You must answer. You can answer easily now. Remembering all that is another matter. And our life of faith is life of relationship. There are no two things of intellectual understanding and then I try to put it into practice. There is no putting into practice. It's only living. And no dichotomy between what is in the head and my practice. What first comes is not my thinking. The practice comes. And that is the Vatican understanding, post-Vatican understanding of faith. And I believe you agree that it is much richer than the earlier thing. It enriches our life. It challenges our life. And it makes us understand what is relationship with God. Relationship with God is not imaginative piety. Piety is good, but the piety is not relationship with God. Relationship with God is in this way historical. Revelation is historical. Relationship with God also is historical. Is the encounter with the other, the naked face. Also, that the same thing is said by the other philosophers, philosophical theologians. So let us see all these things together, understand the meaning of